People, in this video we will learn how we can implement user authentication in our Node application, and also we will see how to protect routes that are to be shown to only the authenticated users. So we'll go ahead and create our basic Node project. We'll say npm init-y. That gives us the bare bones Node project, and we are going to we're going to install Express. So we are going to say npm i express, just like so, and we'll quickly set up our basic Node project. So right now we have our basic Node application up and running, and from right here what we'll need is we will have to create few folders where we're going to have models. We're going to have a folder for controllers. We're going to have a few routes in here, right? And again we'll need some middleware just to verify whether which route is to be protected and which is not to be, right? So we do have a folder structure ready. Let's start by creating few routes first. So we'll create a new file and we'll create some auth routes. I'm going to call it auth.js. Sweet. Instead of this, we're going to make use of express router. So we're going to say const express. We're going to import express first. Right. And then we're going to have const auth router to be express.router. Right. And this authentication router is going to expose two endpoints. So, and again, both of them are going to be, what do we call? Let's make it router, right? Yes. And both of them are going to be of type post. So first of all, we're going to have sign up. It's going to take a request and response. We're going to look at them later on, right? And the other one is going to be a post request as well, and this is going to be a login route. Okay, sweet. And then again we're going to have module.export so that we can import this in our app.js, just like that. Sweet. Back in our app.js, what we're going to do is we are going to get this router. So we can say const auth router. This a can be a small a, doesn't matter, not really matter. This is going to require route/auth. Sweet. So now we can say app.use auth router. I was going to make use of our auth router, and all these routes are going to be on this auth endpoint. So what this means is anything that comes, any request that comes to the auth will be sent to the auth router, right? So I think any request coming at /auth/login would be handled by auth router. I think coming at /auth/signup will be handled by auth router, and even anything /auth, anything that ends with /auth will also be handled by the auth router. Although we don't have a handler for that, but this is going to work fine. Okay, no issues. One more thing that we'll need is a .env file. That's where we're going to keep our secrets. We're going to keep our database connection string. So let us go ahead and create that. We can have .env file like so. And we're going to have a few secrets here. So we're going to have a mongodb URI. And it's pretty simple. We saw how to get your mongodb URI in our previous videos. So we're just going to copy our mongodb URI. And people do not try to use the same URI because this might not work for you, right? And right here we're going to add the name of our application. Let's call it Notes app because I think that will make more sense. Notes app or any other application name you would like to add over there. Okay, sweet. So one more thing that we'll need in our env file, and that is the JWT secret. And again, what this JWT secret is, we're going to get back to it, but let's just add in right here. JWT secret key, something like that. This is going to be a very long set of key, but we can have a small one as well. This is just for the purpose of this demonstration. Never ever have such a small key for your production grade server. Always try to have a SHA-256 generated key because that will be much more secure. Sweet. Let us go back to our models folder and we will need a new user model. So we're going to call it user.js, right? And we'll create a user model for us. For that we will require Mongoose. So let us go and quickly install it. Let's say npm I mongoose, that's the drill. Sweet. So let's import mongoose. Const mongoose equals require mongoose, right? And we're going to get access to schema. Like so. And we're going to create a user schema. User schema, right? And this is going to be of type new schema. And we are going to have few properties in here. Of course, we'll need a name. So let's start with the name itself. This is going to be of type string. Is it required? Yes, it is. And trim can be true because we don't need empty spaces, just in case. Right. And similarly, we need a property for email as well because we need to store the email address of the user. And we're going to copy these properties. Type string required true. And we need to add one more property, that is this unique, so that we can only have only one user with one email, right? So no two users can have same emails. So we're going to mark unique true. And let's add this no property lowercase true. Well, few people can have an email in capitals, so I've got no issues with that as of now. Okay, let's create a field for password. Again, we don't have many things for password. We don't require so many properties, so we can definitely set it to type string and required true. Required set true, and that should do the trick. Sweet. And then finally we can say const user equals mongoose dot model user, and then we can pass in the user schema. Sweet. And then finally we can export this as well. Alright, so we pretty much have our bare bones user model ready, and again we are going to perform few more operations before we save that to the database. We'll be discussing pre-hooks and post-hooks, and before we do that we are going to jump back to our routes right here. And since we have the authentication routes, we need to have controllers as well, right? So we're going to create an auth controller. So you can always say auth.controller.js, right? And what we are going to do right here is we are going to handle all the events that are going to happen on these routes out here. Okay, so we can call it a class auth controller like so, and we can have a method called static login user, or just login. That will do. We're going to take a request, we're going to take a response, and this needs to be an arrow function as well. Hold on, we are inside of a class, this is not required. Okay, sweet. Now we need to get access to the email and password that the user is going to pass, so we can say email. And hold on, before we do anything right here, let us quickly wire it up. So we can always say module dot exports equals auth controller, and we need to get access to this auth controller in our routes. So we'll go back to our auth route, and we are going to say const auth controller equals require. Since we are inside of our routes, so we need to get out of it, and we need to go inside controllers and say auth.controller. Sweet. And right here we can say auth controller dot was it login? I guess so. Okay. And then again, whenever something happens, we can console log. You can always say user hit auth/login. Sweet. And let us see if this really works. We'll go ahead and open our postman, and inside our postman, what we can do is we can have a new request, and what we'll do is we'll make it a post request. We'll say localhost 3500/auth/login, and we'll just hit the request. Okay, something isn't right. Okay, our server isn't running. We'll just start our server by saying node src/app.js. Sweet. Okay, so at least our endpoint is working. We can see the our routes and our controllers are working, so we can now go ahead and write all our logic within our controller. And similarly, we are going to have another method called signup. Let's create that too, signup, and we'll go back to our controller routes, and we are going to say auth controller dot sign up. All right, so we can go ahead and close this file. All we have to do is now deal with the logic right in here. Okay, so whenever user logs in, we at least expect them to add their email and password. So we can always say const email. We can destructure the arguments, email password equals request.body, and just to always see whether we are getting the right data, we can always log console.log request.body, and then we can go back to our postman, and within the body we can pass in some raw data. We can say email test@gmail.com, password can be anything. Okay, let's send this and we get back here. Okay, so our server didn't restart, and we know the solution to the problem. We can always use nodemon src.js. So anytime we make change, the nodemon will ensure that the server is restarted. We'll go back, hit the request again. Alright, something went wrong. Okay, cannot destructure property email and of request.body as it is undefined. Alright, So we already know that we are sending JSON from right here. All we have to do is ensure that our app is capable or is handling the JSON requests, JSON data. So we're going to say app.use express.json, right? Let's hit this again. Sweet. And if you go back to our terminal, okay, so we are getting the email and password, and we are able to destructure both of them successfully. Sweet. But before user can log in, we need to focus on the user sign up. So similarly, we are going to get the data in the sign up, right? And we need a name as well. And we can again copy this request. Instead of login, we are going to hit the sign up. And within body, we are going to pass a name as well. Name can be anything. Name can be Dartbucket. Sweet. People, let us now import our user model, so we can create a new user using our sign up route. So we can say const user model, and this can be require model slash user, right? And to create a new user, we need to save the user by saying const user equals new user model, and then we'll be passing all our destructured fields, or let us say request.body, because we already know all these things do exist on our request.body, and we can have something to really verify whether we have all the properties. So we can have some logic of this type. We can check if no name, then we can always say, hey, that we need a name. If there's no email, we can always ask for an email. If there's no password, we can always ask for a password. And that's your basic form validation on the backend side. And again, if you wish to go a step forward, you can always check if the password is at least 6 characters long, and you can always check if the email that the user enter is valid, right? So all those things can be done. For the sake of simplicity, we are moving ahead of that. So we are going to say user.save, and what this will do is this will create a new user document for us. This gives us a warning because we haven't marked this function asynchronous. Sweet. All right, and we no longer need all these console logs. We need to send a suitable message, and we can say return rest.json user, right? So this will return a user. Sweet. Now we can go back to our postman and create a new user. I think this should work. Let us try to send this request. Let us see if anything happens. Okay. All right. So this is happening because we haven't connected our database to the MongoDB instance, right? So what we'll do is we'll have to go back right here. Let us create a new file with an src and call it db connection. Let us call it connectdb.js. Right, inside of this function, and inside of this file, we are going to write a very basic function that will connect our application to the MongoDB instance. Just like that. You can always say const connect db. Can have a capital B there, no issues. And this can be an asynchronous function. And we can always wrap this inside of a try catch block because we need some sort of error handling there. We need to get access to our MongoDB URI. And we can always do that by saying process.env. And we can always go back and look at what it was. Sweet. Then we can say wait mongoose.connect and the Mongo URI. Alright. And then again, if anything goes wrong, we can always say that hey, we couldn't connect to the and this should also kill our application because we don't want to run our application if the MongoDB isn't connected, because that will make absolutely no sense. Alright. And then we can always say module.exports equals connectdb. Sweet. And this application will still not reference the .env file. So what we're going to do is we'll kill the node process for now, and we will install a package .env like so. And before we do anything with our application, we need to ensure that we are initializing our environment variables. To do so, what we will do is we'll import config.env from the package we just installed, require.env, just like that. And let's run this right here, no issues. Sweet. Let us rerun the application using nodemon. Okay, we are not connecting the database yet, and to connect the database we will import the function const connectdb equals require connectdb, and whenever we start listening to the application we can always call the connectdb right here, just like so. Alright, let's add a message right here, console.log connected to MongoDB, just like that. Okay, sweet. Now we get to see connected to MongoDB, which means we are successfully connected to our MongoDB instance, and we can now go ahead and hit a request. And sweet, we are getting back a MongoDB document, which means our application is now working. We are now able to sign up users. Now the problem is the password of the user is clearly visible right here, and the same thing will be visible inside our database as well. So if we go back to our database out here and somewhere here, yes, inside our nodes app, we can see we do have our MongoDB document right here, and the password is clearly visible. Now this is a problem, because anytime your database is compromised, passwords are easily visible to the hackers, and this is something that we need to take care of, right? To do so, we'll install another package called bcrypt. So we're going to say npm I bcrypt, just like that, and this will ensure that we are we are salting and hashing our password so that it's not visible to the even to the person who is accessing the database, right? Sweet. Where do we do that? We go to our models, and inside of users, every time a model or a user document is created, we have a few events on that, and we call them event hooks, and we are going to make use of the pre-hook, right? So what are we going to do with the pre-hook is, every time a user comes in, when a user is created, we run a hook, we run a pre-hook to hash the password. And to do so, what we're going to do is, on the user schema, we are going to have access to the pre, and before the save, we're going to run a function. This is going to be an async function. Does not require a name. We just have to have the next callback here, right? And we're going to again wrap this inside of a try catch block, because things can go wrong, we don't know. So if the password was not changed, we don't have to hash it again, we don't have to run the algorithm, right? So in that case, we are just going to proceed forward, and that's the reason why we are doing so. We're saying return next, and in case some hashing is required, we're going to always say salt. We're first going to create a salt and say await bcrypt. Okay, we need to import bcrypt, require bcrypt. Okay, bcrypt dot gen salt. 10 would be sufficient for now. This dot password, and we'll get access to the password on the current document, and we're going to hash it using bcrypt dot hash. And we need to pass in our salt. Sweet. And then we can again call the next on it, and if anything happens, we're going to say next and pass in the error e, like so. Sweet. Let's go back to our MongoDB Atlas. Let's delete this record. How do we do that? Let's delete all the users, we don't need them anyway. Sweet. Now let us go back to our postman, and let us create a bigger password, right? Okay, something went wrong. We didn't restart our server. I always do by saying like so. We'll hit the request again, and now the password is completely hashed. Now if we go back to our database, let's refresh this. And if we go to the nodes inside the users, yes, now the password is fully hashed and nobody knows what the password really is. So we are able to successfully sign up the users. Now the bigger problem is we need to log in our users, right? And to log in our users, we use something called as JWT tokens. To implement JWT tokens in our Node app, what we'll need is of course, the JWT package as well. So we'll just go back to our Chrome, and I'll definitely encourage you to go out and read about JWT tokens. So just go back to the npm home, and we can search for the package called JWT, right? And right, this is the package JSON Web Token that we are going to use for our purpose of generating JSON Web Tokens, of course. So we can again copy this, and just for the sake of telling you, npm I and npm install do the same thing, so you can use them interchangeably. Sweet. Now we have access to the JWT as well, and we can go back to our authentication controller. We have successfully implemented the sign up part. Users are finally able to sign up, right? Let us now try to implement the login part, right? To log in a user successfully, of course, we need to ensure that we do have both the properties. So we are going to copy these two, email and password, just like that. And first of all, we are going to look for the user with this email. If the user does not exist, we don't have to proceed any further, right? To do so, we are going to say existing user, const existing user equals user model dot find one. Of course, there's going to be just a single one with the email, right? And again, this is going to be in await, and this needs to be marked as asynchronous. Sweet. So if the user exists, right, we're going to run the run logic or compare the passwords, right? And if the user doesn't even exist, all we have to say is that, hey, the user does not exist, so enter the right email or something like that. So you can always say return dot send dot status 401. Success false and message user not found. All right, that would do. And if the user exists, we're going to compare the passwords. Sweet. Again, since we have hashing the password using bcrypt, we are making use of bcrypt again to compare the passwords. We can always say const bcrypt require bcrypt, and we can always find for a match, and we're going to make use of bcrypt dot compare password, which is the password that was entered by the user, and the password that exists on the existing user document, right? And if the comparison matches, if it was a match, proceed with login. And how do we do that? We're going to see that in a moment. And if it did not match, we'll just say return res. Again, we can make use of this incorrect password. Sweet. Now, since this was a match, let us assume this was a match. So what should happen if this was a match? We can always say let's return something for now, just for the purpose of demonstration, right? And the message can be login successfully, and we can also send the user, existing user. All right, let us run the node app. Let's go back to postman and come back to the auth/login. Okay, and let us try to log in. Sweet. Now we are easily able to log in, but we do not get an authentication token, the JWT token, that can be used again for the protected requests, right? So let us go back to our application, and we need a way to generate an authentication token, right? So what we'll do is we will create another function on top of it. Let us call it static generate auth token, right? And this is going to take user ID because we need to bind the user ID with the authentication token, and we are going to make use of our JSON web token package. So we can say JWT require JSON web token. Sweet. And then we need to get access to our secret. So we'll go back to our JWT secret key. We can say const secret key equals this, and this exists on process.env, just like that. And we can always have a payload. Payload, of course, is going to be the user ID itself. And we're going to have few options, like for how long do we need the authentication token, right? So we can make it expire within 1 hour. So the properties expires in, and we can call it 1h. 1h means it's going to expire in 1 hour. Or we can make it 30 days. This is going to expire after 30 days, so on and so forth. So you get the gist, right? Let's make it 1 hour for now. And finally, we are going to generate our token like so. Token equals JWT sign payload secret key and our options. Sweet. And then we can return the token from our method, from our function, just like that. Sweet. And then we can always use this generate auth token to generate an authentication token whenever we need one. So right here we can say const auth token equals controller dot generate auth token, and then we can pass in the user ID. So existing user dot ID, I think that should work. Let's use the underscore ID. Sweet. And let's pass in the auth token right here. All right. So we'll go back to our application again, and whenever we send a request, we do get an authentication token, and this token can be reused by us to send or to explore resources that are protected, right, or that are allowed to only the authenticated users, right? Sweet. Now to just ensure that our authentication mechanism works, we are going to create a route that will be protected. So we're going to create a test route like so. Again, this is going to be a very basic route. You can again make use of all these properties. We don't need the auth controller, we don't need all these things. All we need is a router dot get, and this is going to be some secret request response. Subscribe. And by the way, if you have watched this video till here, you should definitely consider subscribing. So subscribe to Dartbucket. Okay, so this was our test route. We'll go back to our app.js. Require the test route, and then we can always use app.use test, just like so. If you go back to our postman, we create a new request, and right here we'd say localhost /test/secret. Okay, this is of type, okay, that's a get request, just happened. Oh, all right, go back here. Now the problem is this test route is clearly visible to all the users, and we need to protect it somehow, right? Well, to do so, we always need to pass in, we need to check for the authentication token, and to do so we'll create an auth middleware, right? And this middleware will ensure that only the users that have logged in successfully, or the users that are allowed to view the resource, really view the resource, right? So we'll create an authentication middleware, and we'll call it auth middleware, right? And so now this auth middleware is where we're going to check for the authentication token, right? So we're going to use of course the JWT token, because we need to decode the token and find out which user is trying to access the resource. JSON web token, and we need the user model as well. Why do we need the user model? We are going to discuss it in a moment, so let's grab that as well. Require like so, and then we are going to create authenticated user like so, and since this is a middleware, so this is going to take few parameters apart from request. So we need a request, we need a response, and we'll also need a next, just like that. Whenever we use this authentication middleware, we can definitely check for the headers, and to do so we will just try to see what headers do we get here. Headers dot, okay, not headers, it comes on the request, so into say request dot headers. It's always a good practice to keep playing around with that, and we expect the token to be on the auth header, so that's going to be request dot headers dot auth, and we'll try to console log this token. Console.log token, right? If the token is null, if we didn't get the token, which means the user did not pass the header and the user is not authenticated, so we can always return an error message. Status This can be an unauthorized request, and we can always say JSON. False, and we can say we can return a basic message. Please log in to access the resource. Sweet. And in case we have some value for the auth token or for this token, we are going to move ahead and we are trying to get the data out of the JWT token. So we are going to say JWT.verify. We need to pass in the token. We're going to verify it against our secret key. So we're going to say process.env. Yeah, process.env.jwt underscore, what was that, secret underscore key. Let me quickly verify. Yes. Sweet. And what do we expect to get on this data? Of course, whatever we have sent in the JWT token. So if we go back to our controllers, we go back to our auth controller and we go back to the generate auth token, we see we are passing the user ID as the payload, right? So most probably we're going to get the user ID. So we are always going to console.log user dot data dot user ID. Most probably this is what we are going to get, and if everything worked, we will just call the next handler in the lineup. Sweet. Now let us try to use this authentication middleware. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our test route and we will import this, require middleware / auth middleware. And all we have to do is just say authenticated user, and then comes all the rest of the logic, right? So let us now try to access the resource. All right, I think something went wrong. Okay, that's a very basic mistake. It should say module.exports, just like that. I think this should work. Now if we try to access the resource, okay, this says success false and please log in to access the resource. So if we go back to our login route and we send the request, we do have access to the auth token. And if we look at our authenticated user middleware, it's trying to look for the token on a header, and that is the auth header, right? So if we go back to our request, we get access to this token. We copy this token and the request that is hidden from us, we go back to the headers and pass in the auth token like so, and now send the request. We get to see the hidden message now. That is how you add authentication to your Node application, and you can see the authentication token printed right here, and you can also see rest of the headers that are being passed. So we get access to the auth right here, and this is the user ID that is tied to this authentication token. And using this user ID, we can always find out which user is making the request. So we can always do a request.user equals await user model dot find by ID data dot user ID. And since now this user is tied to the request, every request that makes use of the authentication user middleware will know which user made the request. So we can always say request.user and let us send some dynamic message. So we can say const name equals request dot user dot name, right? And we can always say hello. We can append the name of the user right here, like so. And then if we hit the request again with our authentication token passed in, we get to see the name of the user, right? So this proves that any request that makes use of the authentication middleware will definitely have access to which user made the request, and then we can again run logic based on that. So people, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Do like this video, do subscribe, do share this with your friends. I'll see you in the next one.